Right. Welcome everyone to our next session on automating quality, going beyond AI-driven testing with Tariq King. Hopefully you enjoyed Denelli's session and just hopefully you'll bring the same energy there that you do here because Tariq is an expert in AI. He's one of the handful of people I go to for anything with AI and testing. He's also a recognized thought leader in software engineering, DevOps, testing, machine learning. He's currently the vice president of product service systems at EPAM, and he has over 15 years of professional experience in software industry. He's held multiple positions like chief scientist, head of quality, director of quality engineering, manager of software engineering, and tech architect. He holds a PhD in MS degrees in computer science from Florida International University and a BS in computer science from Florida Tech. And he's published over 40 research articles on peer-reviewed IEEE and ACM journal conferences and workshops, and has written several books and chapters from like O'Reilly, Capgemini, all the biggies. Like I said, he's named King for a reason. I call him the king of AI in testing. So Tariq, welcome to Future of Testing.
Hey, thanks, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you. And the floor is all yours.
All right. Awesome. Well, welcome, everyone. Joel, that's a stellar introduction. Today, I just hope to kind of stir our thoughts on the future as we talk about AI and automation and AI and test automation specifically. But I am always a person that is looking forward, looking beyond. And so hopefully we can go a step even further. But a good part of kind of understanding where we're going is looking at where we came from. So just a quick flashback to 2015. When I started in this space, it was at Ultimate Software, and we were looking at the future of testing. And my boss came and asked me, like, hey, what do you think we'll be doing in the future? And I thought, well, hey, maybe the machines will learn to kind of test themselves in the future, but we were quite a ways away from that. And the truth is, at that time, both myself and Jason Arbin were having like similar visions. Like we looked at the testing space and we thought, hey, you know what? Software testing in its current state is very focused on manual testing. And what do I mean? Well, we tend to separate manual testing from automation. And we look at automation as like, hey, we're writing Selenium scripts or we're writing JUnit tests. But a lot of those activities were still very manual. It was either manual exploratory testing or it was the manual creation of these test scripts. And I think at that time, it was like a fitting moment to start looking forward, right? And so kind of going back to like thinking about the future, where there would be a grand vision of testing, right? Like in manufacturing, there was this lights out philosophy back in the 1950s that we could turn off the lights in the factory and everything would still run because everything was that automated. But we didn't really have such a philosophy in testing, thinking about little to no human intervention. And so, Jason and I set out to actually just define this space a little bit, thinking about how do we build tools that leverage AI to do test automation. Of course, that's where the topic is today. But kind of closely intermingled with that is how do we test AI systems? And then back from my PhD days that Joe was talking about, I was very interested in how do we build testing into the runtime infrastructure of the system? Like, can we make systems self-testable? And, it was a journey, just thinking forward a little bit and defining how things would be. But I guess if I had to say I wrote a book on something, it was actually this particular topic. Like, how do we leverage AI in test automation? And I know in going through that, it was less of about writing a book or any kind of report and more about living these practical experiences where I was working on leading projects that were using AI and applying it to test automation. And of course, we love to think about functional UI testing, whether it be web or mobile or desktop testing, and we were applying it there. But then there were some benefits of AI that we could reuse those test cases across multiple applications, multiple domains, and now start to apply that to the entire app store, which was exciting because now we were seeing testing on a new scale and a new level. And then one of the cool things there about using computer vision and applying it in that manner was that things that are typically very hard or difficult to test, something like a video game, which has a lot of visuals, a lot of aesthetics. Of course, we always think that other things are automatable, but not the visual stuff, like even usability and so on and so forth. And really, AI was giving us a leap forward to be able to do stuff like that, in addition to do things like testing video quality. And so that was one of the key kind of experiences over what would be the next 5 to 6 years, like looking at the AI for testing space and having some practical exposure to real AI living in production for real clients doing some very cool stuff. But as usual, like I ended that thinking about the future. And one of the predictions that I had, because I was looking at number one, seeing AI take over like some of the core concerns of test automation, whether it be functional UI testing or structural testing of a component. Like we were now doing and using AI at multiple levels, right? UI, API, and the unit level. So AI was addressing these core concerns. And then there was another set of projects that were where we were looking at AI for non-functional concerns, right? Like, so these kind of cross-cutting concerns, whether it be usability or accessibility or performance, this was kind of like, coming. And I could certainly see like at one point it would start to culminate. And the other part about that was that like we were seeing more and more dynamic systems being implemented using AI itself. And it led me back to like the core roots of like that research that I did way back in the day, which is that we will need to have systems that are, using machine learning and that they can adapt and learn at runtime. Like they would need to test themselves eventually. Otherwise, I don't see how we would keep pace with what was happening in the runtime of these systems. And so let's flash forward now to the present and 2023. And of course, it's good that I wrote that stuff down because now, like I wasn't just making stuff up for fluff, right? Like it is written there. And I look at the age that we're in right now, and with the rise of generative AI, like we're living in an era where it's very exciting to, number one, be in testing, but to be in tech in general. But we are seeing AI being capable of generating things, right? So these algorithms are creating natural language, audio, images, video, and like it's doing that with little to no human intervention, right? And so this is exciting, like that we are seeing this unfold. And it's quite interesting because recently I went through and kind of looked at a lot of the different advances, like AI being used to generate like photorealistic faces. Like none of these people exist. These are all AI generated people, if you want to call them that. And, AI is creating art, something that we thought wasn't really a doable thing, wasn't really possible. But it doesn't stop there. Music, right? And of course, we've seen like the rise of like our favorite chatbot, ChatGPT, and a lot of these things. And I was recently presenting at a conference, and we did like a bit of a Turing test. A lot of these things are now indistinguishable. This AI-generated content is indistinguishable from human-generated content. And so, one of the biggest wins, one of the biggest things that we've seen, is that generative AI has made AI believable. Throughout the years, like I've seen, you put AI in front of people. This is pre-Gen AI, pre-Chat GPT, and it has all these great capabilities. And you're showing them like, look, we can do this, and we use AI behind the scenes. But they're always like, oh, but let me see the AI. Like, I want to understand. I want to interact with it. Like, show me the AI. So in most conversations with prospects or clients, we ended up spending a good chunk of the time visualizing the AI and explaining how it worked to people because they just wanted to be able to interact with it. Well, now you can just pick up your phone, you can log on to the web, and you can interact with these models and in a way that is pretty amazing, right? So, Chat GPT in particular has made AI very, very believable, right? It's very usable now, it's very visible to everyone, and everyone can understand it. And so, what is the offshoot of that? Well, the offshoot of that was people like feeling like, hey, I think we're a little bit behind the curve because like we were skeptical for so long about this technology, but now it's here and people are using it. And the biggest question that most engineering leaders have in their organization is like, hey, can we use this to actually improve productivity? Like, can we get our engineers? Can we get our business analysts? Can we get everyone to actually use this technology and, see if we can give them a leap forward, right? And as I mentioned before, it is a little bit more than just testing now, right? It is every part of the software lifecycle. Can we leverage AI and generative AI for requirements elicitation and analysis, right? To help us with gathering stakeholder interviews and maybe summarizing user stories that are a result, and maybe even analyzing the gaps in those stories with the roadmap and suggesting ways to fill the roadmap? Can we use it for user design, right? Prototyping. Can we do it architecture? Look at the non-functional attributes of the system, validate our designs, create our designs, and then of course coding, implementation, testing, and deployment. So we're moving towards like this very holistic view of leveraging AI across the software development lifecycle, and in particular is driven by the need for people to like just level up and do things better and do things faster. Of course, software engineering is a hard problem, and so with any hard problem, like we can use as much help as we can, and that's the kind of purpose. So while we see AI generating art and music and all these things, we're now seeing, hey, we can leverage AI for requirements engineering. Can we generate user stories and acceptance criteria and those mockups? And these tools are already out there and working and functional, right? And then, of course, taking it into the design. And if you actually watch these things in action, it's pretty impressive. Like this morning, like I was just playing around with this technology and saying, hey, could you generate a sequence diagram for me that kind of logs into the application and goes through the checkout process? And just watching it start to populate this thing, I was like, wow, if I was back in school, all those software engineering projects that said draw all these sequence diagrams, I would probably be done in a quick time, even if the model wasn't 100% correct. Like it certainly gave me a boost forward in terms of getting that job done. And then I would just have to refine it or edit it. Similarly, on the right-hand side, generating a cloud architecture. Like it's pretty impressive to watch. And of course, it all started by thinking of things like GitHub Copilot and like watching AI actually generate code, right? So no longer just intelligent suggestions, right? Like here is what I want. I want a function to do X, Y, or Z, and boom, there you go. And of course, it doesn't stop there, right? This is a tool that we built at EPAM that's open source, where we're looking at how do we just bring generative AI to the IDE for testers and for SDETs, right? So generating unit test code. Before, these were very hard problems to solve. Now they're a lot easier to solve and integrate into your own environment. And not just generating tests, but analyzing test results and so on and so forth as well. All right, so we know that the technology is here. We know people are interested in helping this to move the needle forward when it comes to productivity. But it's important to understand that like productivity is not just doing stuff faster. Of course, we can generate code. That's great. We can generate artifacts faster. But there's an element there to it. If it's just quantity, then quality sucks. Then we don't get any leap forward. Obviously, if it's also something that is able to push out a lot of stuff and it's high quality, but it costs us a lot to do, is equally not as useful anymore. So productivity is this all-encompassing piece between the quality of stuff, the quantity, and the efficiency. And I remember thinking about this like problem of productivity across the life cycle, and remembering like a mantra that I had when I was at Ultimate Software, which is Q equals P, which is basically that quality equals productivity. And that when you look at this equation, on either side, if something goes down, the other side goes down. And so now, like in translating this like ask of engineering leaders and organizational leaders for productivity, like quality actually becomes a big concern. And of course, today we're here talking about the future of testing. And I don't want to look at that through like these rose-colored glasses and say like, hey, you know what? Like AI is here. We can use it for test automation. That's all great. Let's focus on that. It is here. And quite frankly, we have been using it for test automation. And now that's only going to accelerate. But really the lens that we have to think about is not AI for test automation, but is this lens of quality and productivity. Because how are we really going to start to keep pace with what is happening? If you stop to think about what is happening, every single role in software development may be leveraging this to output things faster. We know it'll be faster because we know the kind of content that it generates. But the thing that we don't know, and that is a little bit harder to grasp, is like, what is the quality of it, right? And really, the question for this forum is, how are we going to keep pace with validating all of this AI generated content? And for me, the answer is, well, we need to automate quality. As we've seen, like there's more than one way to achieve quality in a product, but quality being value to some stakeholder or set of stakeholders at a given cost. Now, we know that traditionally we can do testing, right? And we can try to do testing at the end, right? Which has not been very efficient. And therefore we try to think differently, right? We talk about shift left. But really how we want to think about quality is as an integral part of software development. So validation and verification as you go through. And that's all great because validation and verification are important aspects of that. But we can try to build quality in through good engineering practices, or we could try to test it out, right? One is just definitely more efficient. And so the challenge here is thinking like, how can we automate quality? And not in the traditional sense of automating testing tasks or validation and verification tasks, but starting to move the needle towards where we can have confidence that what is being produced by these large language models, by these AI-driven tools, is actually good, and like we can do minimal review and then move forward. And so the mantra to automate quality is really like, let's start by first addressing a lot of the challenges, because one of the things that really tends to control people, societies, is fear, right? And there's right now a lot of uncertainty, and people, rightfully so, about a lot of the security or intellectual property issues surrounding generative AI. There's also a need to upskill folks on how to actually interact with these tools to use them effectively, because like you can see, obviously if you ask the model the wrong question, it'll give you the wrong answer. But sometimes if you ask it the right question, it still gives you the wrong answer, right? And so it's really about how do you frame up and make sure that there's safeguards, even in how you go about engineering your prompts to these large language models. On the other side, the deceptive part is that the tools generate this large quantity. And if you're not trained, if you're not skilled, if you're not a professional in what you're doing, it's very convincing, and it can really trick you that it is correct, right? So things look correct to the untrained eye. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to find out ways to make sure that those checks and balances are somehow in there. And then, of course, last but not least, is this idea of productivity is not a trivial matter. It's not just flow, right? The engineering culture, a lot of different things actually impact productivity. And so we need to first start to address like these sets of challenges. And then once we do, like we can recognize that we can start to arm ourselves with the tools necessary to actually automate quality, right? So by automating quality, now I look at it as, okay, well, maybe there's different techniques that I can be leveraging to give me the desired results using AI, so that what is output is actually correct. Of course, like the world is flooded with prompt engineering, and this is all great. I think there's a very low barrier to entry there, and most people can kind of pick up, prompt engineering and craft these prompts and guide your models. But if you haven't looked into that, I challenge you to as well. But understand that there's also a limited context that can be provided in that prompt. And if you want to do something, a little bit more deep with a little bit more accuracy and depth, like you need to have other approaches, right? So you can encode your context as embeddings, and now you can send a lot larger context. So this is good if you want to analyze like a huge set of test histories or production logs. Like this is the method to go. Or if you get really advanced, you can start to fine tune models, right? And so there's a lot of open source things out there, and some people in regulated environments have no choice but to go down this route to fine tune and adapt these models to themselves. So the push here is like, let's make sure that we select these appropriate techniques that can help us to get towards the desired result using AI. And then once you kind of have the challenges under your belt, once you know the different techniques, now I would say like let loose and be very creative and go experiment. Experiment, because this is the only way we're going to know what works and what context it applies in, right? So let's not try to make assumptions. Let's make hypotheses, test them out, share that information, and go from there. Like I'm very fortunate to work at a company that is also like contributing at mass to Gen AI experimentation and kind of leading the charge on the quality related aspects of it, right? So I think within like the first few weeks of ChatGPT being released and a lot of these AI tools coming on the market, like we had a ton of experiments going on within EPAM. And for me, like over 400 of those 1,200 across the life cycle were focused on quality and testing and test automation. And in looking at those, we can start to now pull out what are the leading practices and what things it works good for, and actually like get to a place now where when we're applying AI to a problem, like we have confidence in it because we've tested it out, we've experimented with it along the way. And the whole idea here is to let's move towards like a place where we can actually trust the AI that we're using. Some people already trust it, and some of it is a blind trust. Because really, to be trusted, you have to be trustworthy. And trustworthiness, there's a lot involved in becoming trustworthy, right? There's a level of testing as a testing community that needs to be done on these models themselves. And to be able to test something, right, you have to be able to control it, and you have to be able to observe what it's doing. But with AI, it goes a step further. Like you actually need to now move into a spot where the AI is able to explain how it came to a particular decision. And so I think for us as a community as well, like recognizing that there's a whole body of knowledge and whole body of work that will go into creating explainable AI is going to be part of automating quality, right? Because not only is like, hey, the right result or wrong result important, but how it came to that result. Because maybe it came to that result in a way that wasn't ideal or wasn't optimal. And there's just a problem like lurking to happen. And so we need to have explainable data, explainable predictions, and explainable algorithms behind the scenes for generative AI. And so always remember, like we can use AI for good or we can use AI for evil. And at the end of the day, like we're looking as a community to stir up like the idea of leveraging AI, right? Because we have now confidence that it is responsible. There's enough governance. There's a lot of ethics actually built in as a design concern into the AI. It is explainable and interpretable. If we get there, then we can automate quality because we know that AI is itself doing the automation. So if we start now to say, hey, AI is doing the automation, and us as humans, we're making sure that AI is doing the right automation and it is doing the right level of, in terms of scope and in terms of what is being addressed. Like it's all fitting into our process and it's fitting into our people more than anything else. So that's the challenge to this forum. Let's automate quality. And if you don't want to automate quality for yourself, understand that your children are growing up in a society where they're using and interacting with AI models every single day. And so they're living a software journey. And of course, part of this is addressing software quality. But that software is also now embedded and intertwined with AI machine learning models, and they're going to interact with it. And so if we don't figure out a way to kind of automate and look at the trustworthiness and look at the ethics and look at the responsibility of AI and the governance, then I don't know what will happen to them, right? And so that's my challenge. Hopefully this helps us to move forward as we think about the future, not just a future of testing, but a future of quality where we can actually automate what we're doing with AI in quality engineering. Thank you.
All right. Sorry for the delay. All right, Tariq, awesome session, as I knew it would be. Got a lot of questions coming in. The first one is from Chris Tripper. I'm not picking on favorites. He actually is the highest rated question here, and he wants to know, being in QA, all about checks and balances, what sort of checks and balances do you consider when adopting AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, like I always tell people, go into this thinking upfront about checks and balances, like from the very beginning. The first check and balance is going to be, should we even be using AI to solve this problem? Is it an AI first problem or AI warrants AI? Because if there's a simpler solution, then maybe we shouldn't even be going down this path whatsoever. But as you continue, like you start to think about how AI is being applied, what tools are you using, thinking about privacy, data, ethics, fairness, like all of the things that are going to impact, thinking about the skills of people and the culture that might somewhat change from using these tools. So yeah, tons of checks and balances. I think the important thing is to understand what your context is and the risk, and kind of drive everything from that risk.
Great answer. Next one is from Ed. And Ed wants to know, we're starting to use AI in our core apps. Do you think the testing tools to test AI will be the future to also test our AI implementations? And how do we validate AI generation over real generation for fraudulent activities?
Yeah. So I definitely feel like the future. So we're talking about the future of testing and test automation. And of course, like, um, I think the future of testing in general, period, without automation even involved, is AI, right? Like we have to figure out how to test these models. I just gave a course yesterday on quality engineering practices for AI and machine learning systems, and kind of talking about how if you look at the machine learning process and you look at every step, whether it become selecting like the training data, selecting the model, the process, actually running the training process, deploying the model, and making predictions. Like we need to do testing again, and not even just testing, quality engineering along the way, which requires a huge set of skills and a cross pollination of skills from data scientists to machine learning engineers to quality engineers to software engineers. So definitely, like the future of software validation and verification is in testing AI and machine learning systems. On the second question of the fraudulent stuff, and this is like kind of embedded in that question there, where I talk about how do we keep pace with validating AI-driven content. Well, it's not even just keep pace with it. It is actually how do we actually do it, all right? Because one of the key things here, even with like that Turing test that I did, is that it's really hard for us to distinguish as humans, like what is AI versus what is not, and therefore it means that there's some really good fakes going on, and it's only a matter of time between when those fakes are things like Joe Colantonio's identity, right? Like where do we stop there? But I think it comes down to governance, right? And this is why I think governance is kind of behind the eight ball, but we need to get governance in front, because I don't think we will be able to stop how realistic these fakes get. And so therefore you have to kind of control it at some sort of gate. So hopefully that helps.
So Tariq, I know someone asked in the chat when you were showing the slide where you're showing the flow that was created for you, but they want to know what tool did you use to create that that chart?
Which chart? You're talking about the sequence diagram, like
Yeah.
where they flow?
Yep.
Yeah, there was a tool that I did call I used called Diagram GPT. It was done by Eraser.
Okay.
So the Eraser version, like Diagram GPT, is actually like paid, but there's an Eraser version on there that's pretty free, and it just supports like maybe 3 or 4 different models, like cloud architecture, sequence diagram, etc. But go play around with that. Like I'll try to put together. I saw someone asking about a survey of tools or whatever. Kevin Powles did a great survey of some tools. I have some others in engineering that I can share, so I'll try to compile a list and share it out on LinkedIn.
Yeah, because we got a lot of questions around examples of AI tools I can use to generate user stories, the AI tools we can use for automation and QA. So
Yeah.
be on the lookout, everyone, for that. I guess we'll send out a link for that. Really quick, it's Ganesh, quality attendees here. Ganesh wants to know, is there a possibility of using AI for device-based apps in healthcare or baking ATMs or other embedded systems?
Yeah, definitely. So I was just actually at speaking of like embedded systems and hardware, I just actually had the pleasure of going to like the automotive testing expo,
Oh, cool.
which was really cool. I'd never been to an automotive testing expo, but hearing people who are dealing with electrical and embedded testing and so on and so forth. And one of the things that we were bringing there and that I was asked to come was kind of about generative AI. But yes, like I think there's huge opportunity there. I think we're dealing with some of the same problems. I think there's additional challenges because of the constraints on embedded systems and things like regulation and healthcare and so on and so forth. But there is opportunity there, and we have to just figure out how to make it work.
Awesome. All right, Tariq, let's wrap things up quickly. Any parting words of wisdom you want to leave future of testing?
No, I just want to thank Applitools. Thank you, Joe. Like, this is amazing to see this happening, and we're in exciting times. So
Thank you. You are the king. Appreciate you, Terry. Talk
thank
to you
you.
later. Thanks.
Bye bye.
All right, awesome. All right, don't know what happened there, but anyway, thank you everyone for joining this session. If you want to check out how you can actually boost your app's quality as well using AI-powered eyes to catch more bugs in less time, as you've been seeing here, you actually should check out Applitools Eyes for your testing, and you can see it for yourself by claiming your free account. And they just popped it up in the system down below. You see getting started. So we were kind of surprised. I was looking in the comments, and a lot of people have never heard of AI powered eyes or Applitools eyes. So if you haven't heard of it, if you haven't tried it for yourself, now's the time to take advantage of this free account offer and actually see it for yourself in action. Because a lot of things we talk about in this AI, Applitools have had it since 2015. So they've really been ahead of the curve. So they really are the leaders in this area. So I also used to use them full time. So I really believe in it as well. So definitely check it out and let us know your thoughts about it. All right, everyone, that'll wrap it up for today for this session. We'll see you at the next session. Thank you once again, Tariq, and thank you for all your awesome questions and chats. And we'll see you at the next session.